The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched Marcus across the crowded engagement party, his perfect smile never quite reaching his eyes when he looked at me. 3 months ago, he'd been my Marcus, the man who brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning, who knew exactly how I liked my eggs, who whispered promises about our future against my neck in the darkness of our bedroom. Now he stood there with his arm around Sophia's waist, my younger sister, announcing their wedding date to a room full of people who used to be our friends. I'm Charlotte Reed, and until recently, I thought I had my life figured out. 32 years old, senior marketing director at a Fortune 500 company in Manhattan, owner of a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn Heights that I'd renovated with my own hands. The kind of woman who had her shit together, or so everyone believed. But standing in my parents' Connecticut mansion that evening, watching my ex-fiancé celebrate his engagement to my sister, I felt like I was drowning in plain sight. The text had come that morning from an unknown number. Stay away from the wedding, for your own good. Trust me on this. I dismissed it as a prank, maybe from one of Marcus's friends who felt guilty about the situation. But as I stood there, sipping champagne that tasted like regret, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone in this room was watching me with more than just pity. Marcus Chen was everything I wasn't. Spontaneous where I was calculated, charming where I was reserved, golden where I was silver. We'd met at a conference in Boston 4 years ago, and he'd pursued me with the kind of intensity that made me believe in fate. He was a venture capitalist, the kind who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank him for it. His smile could light up a room, his laugh could make you forget your troubles, and his touch could make you believe you were the only woman in the world. Sophia had always been different from me too. Where I was analytical and cautious, she was creative and impulsive. 5 years younger, she was the artist of the family, the one who painted murals in Brooklyn warehouses and dated musicians who played in subway stations. She'd moved back from Los Angeles 6 months ago, right after Marcus and I had started planning our wedding. I just need to be closer to family, she'd said, and I'd been so happy to have her near again. The affair had been so cliché it was almost laughable. Late nights at the office for Marcus became late nights at Sophia's studio. Business trips that I couldn't verify. The classic lipstick on the collar, except it was paint on his shoes, Sophia's signature cerulean blue. When I confronted them 3 months ago, they hadn't even tried to deny it. We didn't mean for it to happen, Sophia had said, tears streaming down her face. Love doesn't follow rules, Charlotte. But here's what made my situation different from every other woman scorned. I was still invited to everything. My parents, in their infinite wisdom and desperate need to keep up appearances, insisted we all act like adults. My mother, Eleanor Reed, society matron extraordinaire, had actually said, "Charlotte, darling, you're too mature to make a scene. Besides, you never really seemed that passionate about Marcus anyway." She wasn't entirely wrong. I'd loved Marcus in my way, steady, reliable, planned. We had spreadsheets for our future, when we'd buy a house, when we'd have kids, how we'd divide household responsibilities. Sophia loved him like a wildfire, all consumption and heat and beautiful destruction. I could see it in the way she looked at him now, like he was her whole world, condensed into human form. The unknown number had texted again while I was getting ready for the party. The wedding is a trap. Don't trust anyone, especially not the ones who smile the most. I'd almost called the police, but what would I say? Someone was sending me vague warnings about my sister's wedding to my ex-fiancé? They'd think I was the bitter ex trying to cause problems. So I'd come to the party anyway, worn my best dress, a black number that Marcus had once said made me look like a film noir heroine, and prepared to smile through the pain. "Charlotte," my mother's voice cut through my thoughts. She glided toward me in her signature pearls and Chanel suit, her smile as sharp as her cheekbones. "You're not mingling, darling. People will talk. Let them talk, mother. That's not the Reed way, and you know it." She linked her arm through mine, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman who claimed to be delicate. "Harrison Blackwood is here, recently divorced, excellent portfolio, and he's been asking about you." I wanted to laugh. 3 months post-betrayal, and my mother was already trying to auction me off to the highest bidder. But as she steered me toward a tall man with salt and pepper hair, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. Marcus was staring at me from across the room, but it wasn't his usual guilty, apologetic look. It was something else, fear, warning. Before I could decipher it, someone stepped between us, and the moment was gone. Harrison Blackwood turned out to be exactly what you'd expect from a man my mother would choose. Handsome in that Connecticut old money way, with a Yale class ring and a smile that had been practiced in front of mirrors since childhood. He owned a hedge fund, of course, and had a house in the Hamptons that he described in detail, while I nodded and tried not to watch Marcus and Sophia dance to what used to be our song. "Charlotte's quite accomplished herself," my mother interjected when Harrison paused for breath. "Senior marketing director at 32, although she laughed that tinkling laugh that meant she was about to say something cruel. We keep hoping she'll slow down enough to give us grandchildren. Sophia's always been the romantic one, but Charlotte here is married to her work. The Reed family estate in Greenwich was everything you'd imagine when you thought of New England old money. 22 rooms of colonial perfection, with grounds that rolled down to a private lake. My great-grandfather had made his fortune in steel, my grandfather had doubled it in real estate, and my father had tripled it in international finance. We were the kind of family that had our portrait painted every 5 years, displayed in the gallery hallway like a timeline of American prosperity. My father, William Reed, ruled his empire from a home office that looked like it belonged in a museum. He was there now, I knew, avoiding the party under the pretense of an important call to Tokyo. He'd never liked Marcus. "Too slick," he'd said once. But he liked scandal even less. When I'd told him about the affair, his only response had been, "Well, at least he's staying in the family." That was the Reed way. Preserve the image at all costs. We didn't have problems. We had situations that needed managing. We didn't have mental breakdowns. We had spa retreats. We didn't have affairs. We had evolving relationships. And we certainly didn't have bitter, scorned daughters who wanted to burn it all down. We had Charlotte being so mature about everything. The text messages had started 2 weeks ago. Always from different numbers, always cryptic. Check the guest list carefully. Ask about the prenup. The truth about Singapore. I'd ignored them at first, thinking it was Marcus trying to assuage his guilt in some twisted way. But they kept coming, increasingly urgent, increasingly specific. "Charlotte." Harrison was looking at me expectantly, and I realized I'd completely zoned out. "I was asking if you'd like to have dinner sometime this week?" Before I could answer, there was a crash from the other side of the room. Sophia had dropped her champagne glass, and the sound of shattering crystal silenced the party. She stood there, face pale, staring at her phone. Marcus quickly wrapped his arm around her, but I caught the look that passed between them, not concern, but fear. "Just wedding jitters," Marcus announced with that salesman smile of his, and the party resumed its rhythm. But I noticed things then that I hadn't before. The way certain guests kept checking their phones. The way Marcus's business partner, David Kim, kept watching the doors. The way my sister's hands shook as she accepted a new glass of champagne. Growing up in Greenwich had taught me to read a room like a chessboard. Every conversation had subtext. Every gesture had meaning. Every smile had a price tag attached. I'd perfected this skill in Manhattan's corporate world, where one missed signal could cost millions. And right now, every instinct I had was screaming that something was very, very wrong. "Excuse me, Harrison," I said, touching his arm lightly. "I need to powder my nose." I made my way through the crowd, noting who watched me leave and who avoided eye contact. In the hallway, the portraits of my ancestors gazed down at me with their painted eyes, all of them masters of keeping secrets. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the anonymous messages again. The latest one had come just minutes ago. "Check the library. Top shelf, behind the Shakespeare collection. Your father knows." The library had always been my sanctuary in this house. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, first editions that were worth more than most people's houses, the smell of old paper and leather and secrets. I found the Shakespeare collection easily, my father's pride and joy, a complete first folio set that he'd bought at auction for an obscene amount of money. Behind it, I found a manila envelope with my name written on it in my father's precise handwriting. Inside the envelope were photographs, bank statements, and a single sheet of paper with my father's letterhead. My hands shook as I spread them across his desk. The party noise a distant hum beyond the library's heavy doors. The photographs showed Marcus in Singapore 6 months ago, when he'd supposedly been at a fintech conference. But he wasn't at any conference in these pictures. He was at a casino, and he wasn't alone. David Kim was there, along with faces I recognized from the less savory side of Manhattan's financial world. The bank statements were even more damning. Transfers from accounts I didn't recognize into Marcus's personal account, then out again within hours. The amounts were staggering, millions of dollars flowing like water through his fingers. Money laundering. It had to be. My ex-fiancé, the man my sister was about to marry, was laundering money for what looked like an international crime syndicate. But it was the letter that made me sink into my father's leather chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "Charlotte," it began in my father's measured tone, even on paper. "If you're reading this, then you received the messages I arranged to be sent. I couldn't tell you directly. The house is being watched. Our phones are being monitored. Marcus Chen is not who you think he is. Neither is David Kim. They've been using our family's connections to clean dirty money through legitimate investments. The wedding is their final play. Once Marcus is legally part of the family, he'll have access to accounts that will make him untouchable. Sophia doesn't know. She's a pawn, just like you were. I'm trying to fix this, but I need you to trust me. Stay away from the wedding, please." "Dad." The door to the library opened, and I quickly shoved everything back into the envelope. But it wasn't my father who entered. It was Marcus. "Charlotte." He closed the door behind him, and I noticed he turned the lock. "We need to talk. I think we've said everything we needed to say 3 months ago." I stood, clutching the envelope behind my back. "No, you don't understand." He moved closer, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen during our 4 years together. Desperation. "I need you to listen to me. Your sister's life depends on it." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." He ran his hand through his perfect hair, messing it up for the first time I could remember. "Charlotte, I know what you think of me. I know I hurt you, but I loved you. I still love you. Sophia she was a mistake that became a necessity." "A necessity?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're going to have to do better than that." He looked at the door, then back at me, lowering his voice. "They have something on me. David's not my business partner. He's my handler. I got in too deep with the wrong people in Singapore, and now they own me. The wedding, marrying into your family, it's all part of their plan, but I'm trying to find a way out." "Why should I believe anything you say?" "Because," he pulled out his phone and showed me a video. "They have Sophia." The video was grainy but clear enough. My sister, bound to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, unconscious or drugged. The timestamp was from an hour ago. But she was just... I ran to the window. The party was still in full swing below, and there was Sophia laughing with our cousin Emma, very much not tied to a chair. "What the hell is this?" "Insurance," Marcus said grimly. "That's not from today. It's from last week when she thought she was at a spa retreat. They drugged her, took the video, then let her go. She doesn't remember any of it. If I don't go through with the wedding, if I don't get them access to your family's international accounts, they'll take her for real, and they won't give her back." My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "Don't trust him. Check the date on the video metadata." I grabbed Marcus's phone before he could stop me, swiping to the video's information. The metadata had been scrubbed clean. No date, no location, nothing. Anyone who knew anything about digital files would know that took deliberate effort. "You're lying," I said, backing toward the door. "This is just another con." "Charlotte, please." He reached for me, but I was already unlocking the door. "Stay away from me. Stay away from my family." But as I yanked the door open, David Kim was standing there, and he wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their jackets bulging in ways that suggested weapons. "Ms. Reed," David said with a smile that made my skin crawl. "I think you should hear what Marcus has to say, for everyone's sake." They escorted me back into the library, like I was a prisoner in my own family home. One of the men in suits closed the door and stood guard while the other positioned himself by the window. David Kim sat in my father's chair, a deliberate power move that made my blood boil. "Your father has been very uncooperative," David began, his fingers steepled like a villain from a bad movie. We thought having Marcus marry Charlotte would be enough, but then that fell apart. Sophia was an unexpected opportunity. My father knows about you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, we're counting on it. David's smile widened. William Reed, the great financial titan, caught helping international criminals launder money through his firm's accounts. Even if he claims he was coerced, even if he says his daughter's life was threatened, the scandal alone would destroy everything your family has built. My phone buzzed again, but this time it was a call from my father. David nodded at me to answer it, putting it on speaker. Charlotte, darling. My father's voice was carefully controlled, the same tone he used during hostile takeover negotiations. Are you enjoying the party? Dad, I hope you're being a good hostess. Remember what we talked about regarding the Singapore account reviews? Everything needs to be in order by Monday. Singapore. He was trying to tell me something. Of course, Dad. Everything's under control. Good. Your mother needs you back at the party. The Blackwoods are asking about you. The line went dead. David was watching me with interest. Your father's quite clever, isn't he? Speaking in code, thinking he's staying one step ahead. But here's what you don't know, Charlotte. We have someone else inside your family. Someone who's been feeding us information for years. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. David. She doesn't need to know. Oh, but she does. David stood, walking to the window that overlooked the party. Come here, Charlotte. Let me show you something. Reluctantly, I joined him. Below, the engagement party continued in full swing. My mother held court near the fountain, surrounded by her society friends. Sophia was dancing with our cousin James, her laughter carrying up to us, even through the closed window. And there, by the bar, was Harrison Blackwood, checking his phone with a frequency that suddenly seemed significant. Harrison? I breathed. Oh no, not him. He's just a distraction your mother provided, though she doesn't know it. David pointed to another figure. Look closer. That's when I saw it. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, slipping something into her purse after a brief interaction with one of the catering staff. The same Aunt Patricia who had access to all our family's legal documents as executor of my grandmother's estate. The same Aunt Patricia who had introduced Marcus to me 4 years ago at that conference in Boston. Patricia's been drowning in debt for years, David explained. Her husband's failed investments, her son's drug problems, the lifestyle she couldn't afford but couldn't give up. We offered her a solution, and she took it. She's been providing us with information, access codes, family trust details. She's the one who suggested Marcus pursue you. She's the one who made sure Sophia came back from Los Angeles when your relationship started falling apart. The room spun. Everything I thought I knew about the last 4 years was crumbling. You planned all of this? Even Marcus and me? Not exactly, Marcus said quietly. Meeting you, falling in love with you. That was real, Charlotte. But David saw an opportunity and you took it, I finished for him. God, was anything real? Was Sophia even real? Or was that planned too? Sophia was an improvisation, David admitted. Marcus was supposed to marry you, get access to the family accounts, and then we'd have what we needed. But you were too careful, too suspicious. You wanted a prenup, separate finances. Sophia, on the other hand, believes in true love. She'll give Marcus anything he asks for. My phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Your father's in the pool house. Go now. Trust me. E. E? Who was E? But I didn't have time to wonder. I need some air, I said, moving toward the door. I don't think so, David said, but I was already pulling out my phone. If you don't let me leave right now, I'm calling 911 and telling them there are armed men holding me hostage in my family home during a party with 200 witnesses. How's that for a scandal? David considered this, then nodded to his men. You have 10 minutes. Don't do anything stupid, Charlotte. Remember, we have video of your sister, we have evidence that implicates your father, and we have Patricia ready to testify that your family has been knowingly laundering money for years. The pool house was dark when I slipped inside, my heels clicking against the marble floor. It had always been more of a guest house, really. Full kitchen, 2 bedrooms, a living room where Sophia and I used to hide during our parents' boring parties. Dad? I whispered into the darkness. A light flickered on, but it wasn't my father sitting in the armchair. It was Eleanor, my mother. Surprise, darling, she said, crossing her legs elegantly. She was holding a glass of whiskey, which I'd never seen her drink in my 32 years of life. "Shut the door, Charlotte. We don't have much time." "Mother? You're E? You've been sending the messages?" "Eleanor Reed, society matron and useless trophy wife," she said with a bitter smile. "That's what they all think, isn't it? Even you, my own daughter. Even your father sometimes." I sank into the chair across from her, my mind reeling. "You know about Marcus? About David Kim?" "I know everything, darling. I've known for 2 years." She took a sip of whiskey, and I noticed her hands were perfectly steady. "Did you really think I spent all those years at charity luncheons just gossiping? I was building a network, Charlotte. Wives of senators, mistresses of mob bosses, daughters of diplomats. Women who are invisible in rooms where men make their important decisions." "But why didn't you—" "Stop it! Because your father's involved up to his neck, though not the way David Kim thinks." She stood, moving to the window to watch the party. "William's been working with the FBI for 18 months. He's been feeding information, gathering evidence. The Singapore trip that Marcus made? Your father arranged it, knowing Marcus would take the bait. Dad's an informant? Your father's a hero, though he'll never get credit for it." Her voice held a mixture of pride and frustration. "But he made one miscalculation. He thought he could protect you and Sophia from all of this. He didn't count on Marcus actually falling for you, or on Patricia's betrayal running so deep. So, the wedding is where the FBI plans to arrest everyone. David Kim, his associates, Patricia, and yes, Marcus." She turned to face me, and I saw steel in her eyes I'd never noticed before. "But there's a problem. Sophia doesn't know any of this, and she's genuinely in love with Marcus. If he's arrested at the wedding, it will destroy her. And if he's not arrested, then David Kim's plan succeeds, and your father's sacrifice means nothing." I stood, pacing to the window. The party was winding down now, guests beginning to leave. I could see Marcus searching the crowd, probably looking for me. "There has to be another way." "There is," my mother said quietly. "But it requires you to do something that goes against every Reed instinct. You need to tell the truth." "What truth?" "All of it. To Sophia. Tonight." She pulled out a thick folder from behind the chair cushion. "This is everything. The FBI investigation, Marcus's involvement, Patricia's betrayal, your father's cooperation. If Sophia knows the truth, she can make her own choice. She can call off the wedding herself, or she can go through with it knowing Marcus will be arrested. Either way, it's her decision, not ours. She'll hate me. She already thinks I'm trying to sabotage her happiness out of jealousy. Perhaps. Or perhaps she'll finally see that you're trying to save her." My mother moved to the door, then paused. "Charlotte, I've watched you your whole life, being the perfect daughter, the responsible one, the one who never made waves. But sometimes, darling, making waves is the only way to stop everyone from drowning." She left, and I stood there holding the folder, feeling its weight in more ways than one. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Where are you? David's getting suspicious." Then another, from an unknown number that I now knew was my mother. "Sophia's in her old room, 3rd floor. You have 1 hour before David's men come looking." Sophia's childhood room hadn't changed much since high school, still painted in that specific shade of lavender she'd mixed herself, still covered with her paintings from various artistic phases. She was sitting at her vanity when I knocked, still in her party dress, but with her shoes kicked off, removing her makeup with the methodical care of someone trying not to cry. "Come to gloat?" she asked without turning around, seeing my reflection in the mirror. "I came to tell you the truth." She spun around, mascara smudged under one eye. "The truth? Like when you told me Marcus never really loved me? That he was just using me to get back at you? I've heard your version of the truth, Charlotte." I set the folder on her bed. "Not my truth, the actual truth. And after you read this, you can hate me forever if you want. But you need to know what you're walking into." She stared at the folder like it might bite her. "What is this, some kind of corporate investigation into Marcus? Did you hire a private detective? Just read it, Sophia, please." For 20 minutes, she read in silence while I stood by the window, watching the last of the party guests leave. I saw David Kim's men positioned at various points around the property, standing guard like soldiers. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Marcus, my father, unknown numbers, but I ignored them all. Finally, I heard Sophia's sharp intake of breath. When I turned, she was holding the photos from Singapore, tears streaming down her face. "This can't be real," she whispered. "Marcus wouldn't. He loves me." "I think he does, in his way," I said carefully. "But he loves his survival more." She threw the photos across the room. "You're just trying to break us up. You couldn't stand that he chose me, so you fabricated all this." "The FBI fabricated it? Dad's been wearing a wire for 18 months, Sophia. Every document in that folder has been verified by federal investigators. The wedding is a trap for David Kim, for his associates, and for Marcus." She was shaking now, clutching the edge of her vanity. No. There has to be another explanation. Marcus said he had some business troubles, but he was fixing them. He said once we were married, everything would be perfect. Once you were married, he'd have access to your trust fund. To the family accounts, you never bothered to put restrictions on because you believe in true love. Stop it. Patricia's been feeding them information for years. She's the one who made sure you came back from LA. She's the one who encouraged Marcus to get close to you after things ended with me. Sophia stood abruptly, grabbing her phone. "I'm calling Marcus. He'll explain everything. Go ahead, ask him about the video." She paused, her finger hovering over his contact. "What video?" "The one where you're tied to a chair in a warehouse. He showed it to me tonight, said it was insurance, that if he didn't go through with the wedding, David Kim would hurt you." The color drained from her face. "The spa retreat. Last week I lost almost a whole day. They said I had a bad reaction to one of the treatments, but..." She sank onto her bed, the phone dropping from her hand. "Oh, God, it's all true, isn't it?" I sat beside her, wanting to comfort her but not knowing if she'd accept it from me. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm so sorry. You tried to warn me," she said numbly. 3 months ago, when you found out about us, you said Marcus wasn't who he seemed. I thought you were just being bitter. I was bitter, but I was also right." She laughed, a broken sound that hurt to hear. "God, what an idiot I've been. The golden sister, the romantic one, the one who follows her heart. And where did it lead me? To a money launderer who drugged me and videotaped me as insurance. You didn't know, but you did. You always know, don't you, Charlotte? Always one step ahead, always seeing the angles." She looked at me with eyes that were so tired, so defeated. "Do you know what it's like, having a sister who's perfect at everything?" "I'm not perfect, Sophia. I dated him for 4 years and never suspected a thing. But you were suspicious enough to want a prenup. You were careful enough to keep your finances separate. You were smart enough to walk away when it ended." She pulled her knees up to her chest, looking suddenly like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "I gave him everything. Every password, every account number. I was about to sign papers making him beneficiary of my trust fund." My phone rang. Marcus again. This time I answered, putting it on speaker. "Charlotte, where the hell are you? David's losing patience." "I'm with Sophia," I said, watching my sister's face crumple at the sound of his voice. "You told her." His voice was flat, defeated. "She deserved to know. You've killed her, you know that? David won't let her just walk away now. None of us can walk away." Sophia grabbed the phone. "Marcus, is it true? All of it?" The silence stretched for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, "I'm sorry, Soph. I never wanted it to go this far. I do love you. You have to believe that. You drugged me. You let them video me unconscious. I didn't know they were going to..." He stopped, sighed. "It doesn't matter. It's too late now. The wedding's in 3 days. If it doesn't happen, we're all dead. David doesn't make idle threats." "Then we'll have the wedding," Sophia said, and both Marcus and I started to speak at once. "Shut up, both of you. We'll have the wedding. But it's going to be on my terms now." The next morning, I found myself in the surreal position of helping my sister plan her wedding to a man we now both knew would be arrested at the altar. Sophia had transformed overnight from the romantic dreamer into someone I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, determined. She looked like me, I realized with a start. She looked like a Reed woman backed into a corner. "The FBI wants to arrest them at the reception," she said, spreading wedding plans across my dining room table. "We'd come to my brownstone to avoid David's surveillance at the family estate. But that gives Marcus time to potentially escape during the ceremony. We need to make sure he stays put. Sophia, you don't have to do this. The FBI can find another way. No. She looked up at me, and her eyes were like steel. They destroyed my life, Charlotte. They used my feelings, my trust, my family. I want to be the one who hands them over. I want to look David Kim in the eye when they put handcuffs on him. My father arrived an hour later, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The weight of 18 months of deception showed in every line on his face. The FBI is concerned, he said without preamble. They think Sophia might be a liability. The FBI can go to hell, Sophia said calmly, not looking up from the seating chart she was revising. I'm the victim here, remember? The one who was drugged and videotaped? The one whose trust fund was about to be plundered? If they want their arrest, they need me to go through with this. They could force Marcus to appear, and David Kim would know something was wrong the second Marcus showed any reluctance. Sophia finally looked up. I've spent 3 months with these people, Dad. I know how they think now. David needs to believe he's won right up until the moment the handcuffs click. My mother arrived with coffee and surveillance photos. David's brought in extra security for the wedding. He's spooked after Charlotte's disappearing act last night. Good, Sophia said. Let him be nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. I watched my sister work, coordinating with the FBI through encrypted messages, adjusting wedding logistics to create choke points for arrests, all while maintaining the facade of a blushing bride on social media. She posted photos of dress fittings, cake tastings, smiled for the cameras my mother's society friends pointed at her. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. I need you to be my maid of honor, she said suddenly that evening, as we sat exhausted among wedding planning debris. Sophia, no, that's too much to ask. I'm not asking. She looked at me with eyes that held no softness. David needs to believe everything is normal. What's more normal than a bride insisting her sister be part of her special day, despite past drama? Besides, her voice cracked slightly, I need someone up there who actually cares if I live through this. Marcus called constantly, but Sophia had coached me on how to respond. She's planning the wedding of the century, I'd tell him. You know how she gets when she's creative. It seemed to satisfy him. Or maybe he was just too trapped in his own web to question it. Patricia was harder to handle. She showed up at my brownstone on the second day, her face a mask of concern. Charlotte, darling, I'm worried about Sophia. She seems manic. She's getting married in 2 days, I said, not inviting her in. I think manic is normal. You don't understand. Patricia grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. David Kim doesn't like surprises. If anything seems off about this wedding, then maybe you should have thought about that before you sold our family out. I yanked my arm free. How much did they pay you, Patricia? How much was our safety worth? Her face crumpled. You don't understand. My son Jeremy, they said they'd kill him if I didn't cooperate. They had photos of him buying drugs, evidence that could have sent him to prison. I was trying to protect my family. By destroying mine? I never meant for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be information, account numbers. I didn't know about the money laundering until it was too late to stop. I wanted to feel sympathy for her, but all I felt was rage. The FBI knows everything, Patricia. Everything. The only reason you're not already in custody is because they need you to play your part at the wedding. She stumbled backward, her face white. You're lying. Check your phone. There should be a message from Agent Sarah Chen. She'll explain your options, cooperate fully, and maybe avoid life in prison, or run and definitely spend it there. Patricia's phone buzzed. She looked at it, then at me, then turned and walked away without another word. I never saw her again after that day. She chose to run, and they caught her at the Canadian border 12 hours later. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and humid, typical August weather in Connecticut. I stood in Sophia's childhood room again, this time helping her into a wedding dress that cost more than most people's cars, a dress she'd chosen specifically because it had a reinforced bodice where she could hide the wire the FBI had fitted her with. How's it feel? Agent Chen asked, adjusting the tiny microphone hidden in Sophia's bouquet. Like I'm wearing a bomb strapped to my chest, Sophia replied, her gallows humor intact despite the circumstances. Agent Chen, no relation to Marcus, as she'd emphasized when we first met, was a small woman who looked like she could kill you with her pinky finger. She'd been my father's handler for the entire 18 months, and she'd become something like a guardian angel to our family in the last 3 days. Remember, she said, pinning the last hidden camera into Sophia's veil. We need Marcus to say the vows. Once he's legally bound to you, even for those few seconds before arrest, it gives us additional leverage for asset forfeiture. Every penny he's hidden, we can claim. How romantic, Sophia said dryly, checking her reflection. She looked perfect. The ideal bride, if you didn't notice how her eyes had gone cold as winter. My mother entered, elegant in navy blue, playing her role flawlessly. The guests are arriving. David's men are at all the entrances, but so are ours. She meant the FBI agents posing as wedding staff, security, even some guests. Your father's with Marcus in the groom's suite, making sure he doesn't get cold feet. And Harrison Blackwood? I asked. He'd been my assigned escort for the day, another layer of normalcy for David to observe. Already 3 whiskeys deep at the bar, boring everyone with stories about his yacht. My mother smoothed Sophia's veil with surprising tenderness. My brave girl, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do, Sophia said simply. They took my choices away. Now I'm taking them back. We made our way downstairs, past portraits of Reed ancestors who'd probably turn in their graves if they knew what was happening in their family estate. The wedding was being held in the gardens, with a clear tent in case of rain, and 200 chairs filled with a mixture of society elite, Marcus's business associates, and undercover federal agents. Marcus was already at the altar, looking handsome in his custom tuxedo, his smile fixed and slightly desperate. David Kim stood in the front row, his own smile sharp as a blade. He'd positioned his men throughout the crowd. I counted at least 8, though Agent Chen had assured us they'd identified 12. As the music started and I began my walk down the aisle as maid of honor, I caught sight of something that made my heart skip. There, in the back row, was someone I hadn't expected. Sophia's ex-boyfriend from Los Angeles, Jake Martinez, the artist she'd left behind when Patricia had lured her back to Connecticut. He was watching Sophia with a mixture of pain and confusion that told me he had no idea what was really happening here. I took my place at the altar, Harrison beside me as Marcus's reluctant best man. David had insisted on the symmetry. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at the back of the tent where Sophia would soon appear. The wedding march began, and everyone stood. Sophia appeared in the entrance, our father at her side, and even knowing what was coming, I gasped. She was radiant, every inch the perfect bride, her smile so genuine that for a moment I wondered if she'd changed her mind, if she'd decided to forgive everything for love. But as she got closer, I saw the truth in her eyes, controlled fury masked by bridal joy. She was hunting, and Marcus was her prey. Who gives this woman to be married? The officiant asked. Her mother and I do, my father said, his voice steady despite everything. He kissed Sophia's cheek, whispered something in her ear that made her smile tighten, then took his seat next to my mother. Marcus took Sophia's hands, and I saw him flinch slightly. Her grip must have been crushing. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, and I spotted Agent Chen's team moving into position around the perimeter. We are gathered here today. Part 9. Climax. The ceremony proceeded with excruciating normalcy. Marcus and Sophia faced each other, hands clasped, the picture of young love. But I could see the sweat beading on Marcus's forehead despite the relatively cool morning, could see how Sophia's knuckles were white where she gripped her bouquet. Do you, Marcus Chen, take Sophia Reed to be your lawfully wedded wife? The officiant asked. Marcus hesitated for just a second, his eyes darting to David Kim, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I do, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you, Sophia Reed, take Marcus Chen to be your lawfully wedded husband? This was it, the moment where everything would either go perfectly or fall apart catastrophically. Sophia smiled, that same brilliant smile that had charmed everyone her entire life, and opened her mouth to speak. But before she could say anything, a scream pierced the air. Everyone turned to see Jake Martinez standing up in the back row, pointing at something behind the tent. Fire! There's a fire! Smoke began billowing from the catering tent, and panic erupted. Guests started running, David's men reached for their weapons, and in the chaos, I saw Marcus grab Sophia's arm. We need to go, he hissed. Now! But Sophia yanked free, and in a voice that carried over the chaos said, I do. I said I do. We're married. That's when the FBI moved. Agents appeared from everywhere. The catering staff threw off their aprons, revealing FBI windbreakers. The security guards drew their real badges. And even some of the guests stood up with weapons drawn. FBI, nobody move! David Kim tried to run, but Agent Chen personally tackled him into the wedding cake. His men reached for weapons, but found themselves already surrounded. Red dots from sniper rifles dancing on their chests from positions in the trees. Marcus stood frozen at the altar, looking between Sophia and the approaching agents with dawning realization. You knew. This whole time. You knew. I knew, Sophia said calmly, pulling the wire from her bodice. Every word you said in the last 3 days they heard. Every plan you and David made. Every threat. Every admission of guilt. But the fire? Jake Martinez walked forward, and I realized he was wearing an FBI jacket too. Special Agent Martinez, he said, showing his badge. I've been undercover in the LA art scene investigating money laundering for 3 years. Imagine my surprise when my investigation led me to my ex-girlfriend's wedding. Sophia stared at Jake in shock. Your FBI? Our entire relationship was fake? No, Jake said softly. The relationship was real. It's why I had to leave when you came back here. Conflict of interest. But when I heard you were marrying Marcus Chen, one of our primary targets, I couldn't stay away. The smoke from the fire, which I now realized had been controlled, probably just smoke bombs, began to clear. David Kim was in handcuffs, screaming about his rights. His men were being loaded into federal vehicles. And Marcus stood at the altar, looking at my sister with something that might have been admiration. You played me, he said. You played me perfectly. You taught me how, Sophia replied. All those months of lying, manipulation, using my feelings against me, I learned from the best. Agent Chen approached with handcuffs. Marcus Chen, you're under arrest for money laundering, conspiracy, kidnapping, and about 15 other charges we'll discuss at the office. But as she reached for him, Marcus pulled something from his pocket, a small device with a single button. Insurance, he said, his salesman's smile returning one last time. The real Sophia is in a warehouse in Queens. The video wasn't from last week. It's from this morning. My associates grabbed her from her room at dawn. This woman is an imposter, probably an FBI agent in disguise. Everyone froze. I looked at Sophia, who had gone pale. Agent Chen's hand moved to her weapon. Marcus continued. If I don't make a call in the next 5 minutes, my associates have orders to kill her. So either you let David and me walk out of here, or Sophia Reed dies. You're bluffing, Agent Chen said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Am I? Marcus held up his phone, showing a live video feed. A figure in a wedding dress, face obscured by a hood, sat tied to a chair. Should we test it? My blood ran cold. The dress was identical to Sophia's. But then I noticed something. The hands tied to the chair had a small scar on the left thumb. Sophia had gotten that scar from a pottery accident in college. She'd shown it to me while we were planning this trap. The bound woman had no scar. Part 10. Conclusion. That's not me, Sophia said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Nice try, Marcus, but you forgot one thing. You never really knew me at all. She walked over to the bound figure on the video feed, which was being projected on someone's phone, and pointed to the hands. No scar from my pottery wheel accident. The wrong shade of nail polish. I chose bride's blush, not pinky promise. And the dress? It's a size too big. You grabbed someone else, Marcus. Probably one of your own people in disguise, trying to sell the con. Marcus's confidence wavered. You're lying. Call them, Sophia challenged. Call your associates. Ask them to remove the hood. Marcus dialed frantically, but the call wouldn't connect. Agent Chen smiled. Cell tower's been jammed for the last hour. The video you're showing us is a recording, probably from days ago. We found your warehouse in Queens this morning. It was empty except for some very confused rats. The device in Marcus's hand was suddenly just a piece of plastic. His threats, as empty as his promises, had always been. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he looked at Sophia one last time. I did love you, he said quietly. Both of you. In my own broken way. That's the problem with broken love, I said, stepping forward. It cuts everyone who tries to hold it. As they led him away, Sophia suddenly sagged against me, all the strength she'd maintained for 3 days finally depleting. "It's over," she whispered. "It's actually over." But there was one more revelation waiting. My father approached with Agent Chen, both wearing expressions of grim satisfaction mixed with something else. Concern? "There's something else you need to know," my father said. "Patricia's laptop, the one we recovered when she tried to run, it had information about other families they were targeting. The Blackwoods, the Vanderbilts, the Astors. This was bigger than just us." Harrison Blackwood, who'd been standing frozen through the entire arrest, suddenly spoke up. "My divorce? My wife said she had evidence of insider trading, threatened to expose me unless I gave her everything. But I never—" His face went white. "Oh God, they were setting me up too, weren't they?" Agent Chen nodded. "We'll need to interview you, Mr. Blackwood. But yes, it appears you were their next target after the Reeds. The reception tent, which should have hosted our family's shame, instead became an impromptu FBI processing center. Guests gave statements, phones and laptops were collected as evidence, and the wedding cake, what was left of it after David Kim had been tackled into it, sat forgotten on its table like a monument to our near disaster." Jake Martinez approached Sophia as the sun began to set. They stood apart, two people who'd once loved each other, both revealed as different than they'd seemed. "So you're a federal agent," Sophia said. "So you're a badass who just took down an international money laundering ring," Jake replied. "We're quite a pair." "We were." Jake touched her face gently. "Maybe we could be again. When this is all over, when the trials are done, when you've had time to heal." Sophia leaned into his touch for a moment, then stepped back. "Maybe. But right now, I need to figure out who I am when no one's lying to me. When I'm not someone's mark, or someone's perfect daughter, or someone's romantic sister." She walked over to me, linking our arms. "Right now, I just need my sister." As we walked back toward the house, past the ruins of the wedding that never quite was, past FBI agents cataloging evidence and society matrons gossiping about the scandal of the century, I realized something had fundamentally shifted between us. "Charlotte," Sophia said suddenly, "I owe you an apology. For Marcus, for not believing you, for—" "No," I interrupted. "We were both victims, just in different ways. I always envied you, you know," she admitted. "Your perfect control, your ability to see through people, your success. But now I understand. That control, that suspicion, it's armor, isn't it? Protection against people like Marcus and David." "It didn't protect me from Marcus," I pointed out. "No, but it protected you from complete destruction. You kept enough of yourself separate that when he betrayed you, you could still stand." She squeezed my arm. "Teach me. Teach me how to be that strong. You just took down an international crime ring, Soph. I think you're plenty strong. I was angry. Anger fades. I need to learn the kind of strength that endures." Epilogue. 6 months later, I stood in a federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, watching Marcus Chen receive his sentence. 15 years, with possibility of parole in 10 if he continued cooperating. He looked smaller in his prison jumpsuit, his golden boy charm finally exhausted. David Kim had gotten 25 to life. His empire crumbled, his assets seized. Patricia took a plea deal, 7 years in minimum security and full cooperation. She'd wept through her entire allocution, but I couldn't find it in myself to forgive her. Some betrayals cut too deep. Sophia had surprised everyone by going back to school, not for art this time, but for law. "I want to understand how they did it," she'd told me. "I want to make sure no one can ever do it again." She and Jake were taking things slow, rebuilding on a foundation of truth this time. My father had been cleared of all wrongdoing, his 18 months of dangerous undercover work earning him a commendation he could never publicly acknowledge. The experience had aged him, but also somehow renewed his marriage with my mother. They'd started traveling together, making up for all the years when keeping secrets had kept them apart. And me? I'd left my corporate job, started my own consulting firm specializing in financial security for high-net-worth families. It turned out our scandal had made me something of an expert in the field. My first client? Harrison Blackwood, whose ex-wife had indeed been compromised by David Kim's network. "You saved my family," Harrison had said over coffee one morning. "Let me return the favor." We weren't dating. I wasn't ready for that yet. But we were building something. Trust, maybe. Friendship, definitely. The possibility of more, eventually. Call to action. Standing outside the courthouse that cold February morning, Sophia and I watched the city move around us. Endless streams of people, each carrying their own secrets, their own betrayals, their own redemptions. Do you ever wonder, Sophia asked, how many other families are going through something like this right now? How many other Marcuses and Davids are out there, finding vulnerable people to exploit? Every day, I admitted. We should do something about it. Start a foundation, maybe. Help families recognize the signs, protect themselves. I looked at my sister, no longer the naive romantic, but not hardened into cynicism either. She'd found a balance I was still seeking. The Reed Foundation for Financial Security, I suggested. The Reed Sisters Foundation, she corrected. Because the real strength isn't in the family name or the money or the connections. It's in the people who refuse to let themselves be destroyed. As we walked away from the courthouse, from Marcus, from that chapter of our lives, I thought about all the warnings I'd ignored, all the signs I'd missed, all the times I'd chosen comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. And I thought about everyone reading this story, perhaps recognizing shadows of their own relationships, their own family dynamics, their own willingness to look away from red flags. Here's what I learned from all of this. The people who hurt us most are often the ones we trust most. They have to be. Strangers don't have the access to destroy us so completely. But that doesn't mean we should stop trusting, stop loving, stop hoping. It just means we should trust with our eyes open, love with our minds engaged, and hope with backup plans in place. If someone tells you to stay away from something that involves your family, maybe listen. If the person you love seems too perfect, too charming, too invested in your family's connections, maybe ask why. If your instincts scream that something's wrong while everyone around you insists everything's fine, maybe trust yourself instead of the crowd. And if you find yourself at a wedding where the groom is arrested at the altar, the bride is wearing a wire, and half the guests turn out to be federal agents, well, at least you'll have a story that beats everyone else's at dinner parties. But most importantly, remember this. Your family's reputation, wealth, and social standing mean nothing if you lose yourself trying to protect them. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let the whole facade crumble and rebuild something real from the ruins. Sometimes the person warning you to stay away is trying to save you. And sometimes, just sometimes, the wedding that doesn't happen is the one that saves everyone.